Ladies and gentlemen, in this RedGameNintendo.com video, we're going to be talking about the Xbox One's hardware specification and performance. What, I hear you cry. We know what the performance is of the Xbox One. We know how much more powerful it is than Xbox 360. Apparently we don't, because Microsoft themselves have some confusion in this issue. Way back on May the 22nd, the tale of confusion begins when Microsoft's Xbox Australian spokesperson Adam Pullington remarked that the Xbox One is 10 times more powerful than the Xbox 360, and then it would be 40 times if you were to take into account the cloud computing. Okay, so how is that going to change? Well, fast forward until last Monday, when Microsoft Game Studios chief Phil Spencer was talking on Late Night with Jimmy Pullington, and he stated that the Xbox One was 3 times more powerful than the Xbox 360. Okay, bit confusing, but the tale does continue. He then corrected himself on Twitter. He said that it was 8 times more powerful without the cloud. But no, wait, he corrected himself again and then said it was 10 times more powerful without the cloud. He said that the 8 times was, and I quote, "It was a mistake. 8 times is the right number. I just messed up the line." And then he's then stated later on, "Depends on exactly what you're doing with the system. For purely local functions, it's closer to 10 times without the cloud." Okay, so let's grant him that he stuttered. Well, what exactly are the measurements they're using for this more powerful than the Xbox 360, okay? Because for X to be more powerful than Y, you need to know what, one of them is. You need a constant, okay? And if you don't know what the constant is, you need to know what the measurement is. So, in this case, let's talk about memory. It can't be memory, because the Xbox One has 16 times more memory than the Xbox 360, so it's obviously not memory, right? Is it GPU performance? It can't be that either, because the GPU performance of the Xbox One is by no stretch of the imaginations to be 10 times, or even 8 times that of the Xbox 360. Indeed, 8 times would be a lot closer to what the PS4 is putting out. Of course, the Xbox 360 has around 240 GFLOPs of GPU/processing power. The Xbox One has about 1.2 to 1.24 GFLOPs of computing power. The PS4 has about 1.84 GFLOPs of computing power. I'm sorry, now I'm the one that's messing up my lines. I mean T-flops of computing power. So the PS4 and Xbox One have 1.2 for the Xbox One and 1.84 for the PS4. Sorry about that. All these numbers running around. So, as you can see, it is easy to misspeak, especially when you're in a live environment, especially when you're in the middle of a studio audience. And I could 100% agree. It's very easy to mess up the line, but 3 times is a hell of a lot different to saying, like, it's 9 times. Like, let's say you're saying 10. How could you get 3 and 10 mixed up? Okay, and G and T, they're easy to mix up as well. But when you're messing up so profoundly, another point as well, many people now are calling into question things such as the cloud computing side of things, because the cloud, of course, is there to offload some of the work from the GPU and CPU. People are calling that into question as well, because Microsoft are really backing up the fact that this system will be available, this year, and it will keep growing, and we will add more computational power to the cloud, and the system will grow with age. And okay, many people have taken this apart already, and I've done so in another video, so you can check out the Xbox One cloud video if you're really, really curious. That's on this channel. But another point, just to summarize a couple of the points. First of all, latency. Okay, so that's there, and that's just something you just can't deal with. It's just nothing you can do with it. Alright? And obviously it can be used for certain stuff. We've discussed this heavily already, but it cannot be a magic bullet for everything. Second issue, If it was really the cure-all, then in reality you're never going to be able to sell another Xbox successor, right? Because the computing power will continue to grow, and of course that's not true either. So people are hitting this with a heavy dose of skepticism, and to be honest with you, I do not blame them. Sony, as far as I'm aware, have been fairly silent on this in terms of how much more powerful it is than the PS3. I have done a bit of checking, but I haven't found anything, so if you guys do find a quote from one of the Sony executives recently on how much more powerful the PS4 will be, please do drop it on to facebook.com/RedGamingTech and I'll take a look. But Sony, of course, are just sticking with the 1.84, and they are sticking with GDDR5 RAM all of the time. Microsoft continue to say that it's X times more powerful than the Xbox 360, depending on who's speaking. But let's face it, Microsoft have made some really, really big errors recently in terms of speaking to the public and to the media. Chief among them, just a couple of days ago, Xbox support was speaking to some fellow on Twitter. And the chap asked a very simple question: if I get banned on Xbox Live, am I screwed with the games collection I have? In other words, if I buy a single-player game, whatever that title is, can I still play that game online if my account is banned? Simple, black and white question. And they responded to him rather promptly, and they said, "Why, my good fellow, that is certainly not the case. If you're banned, you lose all access to the games." And rather obviously, this prompted a series of questions around the internet, and Microsoft finally responded. More to the point, Major Nelson responded and said, no, this isn't the case. This is actually wrong. You do not lose access to your games. You just lose access to, well, playing online. So very similar to the current Xbox, right? And then, of course, there have been the other issues with Twitter that they've had, such as the deal with it, and I won't really even need to elaborate on that. I'm sure most of you guys are familiar. If not, you can just Google for about 2 seconds. You'll find out Microsoft deal with it, and I'm sure you'll probably come up with many a laugh. Regardless, stuff like this is not good for business. Just today, they've been trying to defend their price point as well. So Microsoft really seem to be constantly on the defensive, as I've said in another video, or a couple of videos now, and constantly making little mistakes like this, especially when you're on the air in front of, well, let's just say a small, not a small audience. It's not really a good thing, especially when you're asking them to plonk down 500 for the privilege. So yeah, as I said, I highly doubt it's going to be 10 times the performance of the Xbox 360. If so, what does that make the PlayStation 4? That is what I would like to know, or for that matter, what the hell does that make a gaming PC? What does that make a high-end gaming PC? Does that make it 40 times the performance, not including the cloud? It's just ridiculous. I don't like when companies use metrics like this. It really bugs me. When a company says something is X times more powerful, tell me what you are basing that number on. I don't like that. Just tell me how you're calculating it, really. That's all I want to know. Tell me what numbers you are using to calculate this. And this is another issue, by the way, that I have with a couple of other games developers as well. Specifically Blizzard. When I used to play World of Warcraft, they'd always say that our internal numbers, show that X-Class is not doing enough DPS, or X-Class is doing too much DPS, or whatever. And then the community would ask, okay, could you tell us how you calculated those numbers, please? Because, our sims aren't working. So if you're making a mistake, or we're making a mistake, I just want to know that so that we can adjust accordingly. And they would get no answer. They'd just say, well, our internal testing methods are secret. I don't know if they've changed this, because I haven't played WoW in a long time, okay? So I'm just going by what the old school used to be. I don't know if it's changed in the last couple of years before anyone puts me on blast. But it just used to piss people off, because, tell me how you're calculating it, and then we can go from there. Because if I'm coming up with one mathematical formula, and you're coming up with another mathematical formula, those maths may not even add up because we're not even calculating the right thing. For example, Microsoft in this case could be saying, okay, we're going to take the GPU power, we're going to take the CPU power, we're going to take the amount of hard drive space, we're going to take the amount of available bandwidth on the memory, we're going to take the amount of RAM on the system, we're going to take everything and we're going to boil it down to averages of how much more powerful it is in the Xbox 360, and we're going to average that out and use that as the arbitrary number. That doesn't work, okay? Because, as we all know, saying that, say, a console has like 10 times more disk space, what does that matter if you're trying to calculate something? And obviously it doesn't have 10 times more disk space, but you get the idea of what I'm saying. I'm, of course, being a bit silly and whimsical here for the sake of video, but you understand what I mean, right? It's like, tell us how you're calculating this so we can understand. And when you're saying that it depends what you're doing with the system, are you talking about just being on the dashboard? And I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not actually trying to be like anti-Microsoft here, because as I've said millions of times in my videos, I want Microsoft to do well. Not because I have a massive love affair for Microsoft, not because I dislike Sony, but because I like it both equally. And the problem is, if you have just one console that does really well and the other one just gets absolutely pillaged, and it seems to be happening right now because Microsoft cannot gain traction. And the problem is, when you keep making mistakes like this, tell people how it's being calculated, be really honest about it, because at some point or another, there are a lot of smart people out there and they're going to figure this stuff out. Like Nintendo, for example, weren't being 100% honest in terms of the Wii U specifications, and lo and behold, some of the stuff gets, well, found out pretty damn quickly, doesn't it? Because people open up that console and they will figure out how the performance is going. And what parts are inside it. And that's why now console manufacturers are a lot more honest than they used to be, because Sony, for example, when the PS4 was announced, you know, most conferences, they didn't used to be this technical. They just used to say, okay, the console has X. And that was basically it. Like, back in the PlayStation era, you'd hear a lot of CD-powered console, because CD was somehow synonymous with, like, you know, multimedia and superpower, when in reality, of course, you can have a CD drive, and it doesn't matter how powerful the CPU is. As long as it's powerful enough to actually read the data from the drive, and it was fast enough to keep up, what the hell does it matter? But people were just considering that synonymous. And of course then there was the whole HD era thing, when companies would just add HD to the end of something. It doesn't matter what it was. Buy these tomatoes, they're HD versions, and of course people would be really happy to buy it. In other words, sometimes there just has to be some figures there. Sony were just blunt, and they just said, okay, here are the figures for the console. And Microsoft have been fairly honest as well. They have said X, Y, and Z. The problem is, then they're saying that it's 10 times more powerful than the Xbox 360 and 40 times with cloud-based computing. And once again, I would really just like them to answer the questions of how it is 40 times or 30 times or 10 times or whatever numbers they're going to end up using more powerful. Not because of any other reason, I just want to know what measurements they're using in case I, as a tech channel, or anyone else, are missing something. Because obviously if we are, then we can correct ourselves. This isn't me being cynical, this isn't me being harsh or whatever, this is just me being honest. If we are missing something, or you know something of how your console works, and it's obviously, you know, we're ascertaining the numbers and the figures wrong, or something or another, then tell us, so that we can analyze that and better educate ourselves, or better understand. But right now, the figures that we have from you guys, from Microsoft of course, they're not making sense, at least to most people in the tech industry, including myself and tons of other people who have been around for quite a long time as well. So anyway, that's just a bit of a rant on my part. So hopefully you've enjoyed the video anyway. I will hopefully see you guys soon. Take care and bye for now.